Today's video is sponsored by Scale. Use the promo code Mattia to get 10% off your memberships. What is up, everybody? Welcome back. We're getting near the end of the series. I know it's sad, but fear not, because what I planned for these last two episodes is going to be extra special, particularly the last one. I'm not going to spoil anything for you, but you're very welcome to speculate in the comments. Today, though, we're going to have some fun. We're going to take a closer look at orchestrations from the world of classical and concert music. But enough with the introduction, it's going to be a long video as always, so let's jump in with number 81. What do we have here? Let's see. Of course, we have the melody on the oboe, and on the second half is followed by the French horns. Let's listen. For the accompaniment, we basically have strings for the biggest part on the second half, followed by woodwinds. So let's have a listen to the strings first. So it's quite a simple progression for the most part. It's 1, 4, 5s with a couple of diminished chords and, functional harmony. And to give it a little bit more movement, at the beginning we have a harp playing in triplets. We have an interesting doubling here on the second half with basses and a timpani roll, basically on a pedal tone. It is something we've talked about before, so nothing strange about this. We said we had the woodwinds as well, with flutes doubling violin 1, oboes doubling violin 2, clarinets doubling violas, and bassoons doubling cellos, of course. And for the brass section, we have some stabs, basically just accenting the important notes in the melody. All right, very simple. Let's listen to everything together. Before we move on to the next example, I want to show you guys something cool, which I always thought, was, inspired by this. Very often people like to draw the parallel between, the Harry Potter soundtrack and the Nutcracker because of the Celeste instrument, but this is also, to my ears at least, something that obviously John Williams was heavily inspired by. And you can see that in those leaps in the melody and the intervallic nature of it. So this might be one of my favorite ones so far, and I think it really shows how you don't need, like a billion different layers to have a big sound, right? Because we only really have a couple of different things happening. Obviously, we have this piano part, which is the most important part, really. So let's have a listen to this. Yeah, well, this is obviously way beyond my ability to play, and I would assume even for like an accomplished pianist, it would take quite a bit of practice to play something like this. But we basically just have an introduction here in the first 4 bars, and we then have some arpeggios that accompany the melody on strings, which is really strong, taken by violin 1, violin 2, and violas in unison. Very thick kind of texture. While here in the lower register, we have basses and cellos basically jumping up and down, roots and fifths. For the rest of the orchestra, we basically have the first clarinet doubling the melody, horns, and the rest of the clarinet section basically playing some chords here at the end, just to make it a little bit more dramatic. That's it, nothing else. So really simple orchestration, but very, very effective. So let's have a listen to this again. Now, you probably recognize number 83. So we have quite a few different things going on over here. We start with a big swell on, pretty much the entire orchestra. Let's have a listen to that. And the strings very quickly jump to this pattern, which in the original version, I believe is in 5/4, but I've changed it. I've stretched it across 8 beats, just to make it feel a little bit different, because I didn't want to copy it exactly the same way, right? And that is mirrored on, percussion, of course, with timpani and the low brass section, so trombones and tuba. Something interesting here is the harp, which basically plays this very same thing, but is spread across 2 octaves. So let's have a listen to this. It's very subtle, but if we put this in context, it kind of gives it a little bit more dynamism. And the melody is basically taken by brass. As soon as the low brass drop out from that pattern we just played, they start playing the melody harmonized in major triads. Oh, just so you know, the files for this project, in case you're interested, are available on my Patreon. And what's happening harmonically is basically just a bunch of polychords clashing against the pattern that we have, that kind of ostinato we played. And I guess you could interpret at the beginning this chord that we have, this, D flat major 7 over C. You could interpret it as a D flat major 7 with the major 7th on the bass. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So let's play everything from the top. So this might be less known than, the other examples, but I'm going to put the name on the screen because if you don't know this, you have to go and listen to it. It's really, the original version, is really, really beautiful. Again, this goes back to the idea of, not needing much in order to be able to build, a big kind of sound. We only really have a couple of things going on. These big arpeggios being played by violin 2 and violas and cellos in octaves. I'm going to put the bass in as well, just so that you have some context. Unfortunately, these are some of the things that samples don't do very well, but you get the idea. And what's happening harmonically here can somehow be linked to the very first example we played today, very simple functional harmony, basically just 1, 4, 5 cadences, and not much else after that. The melody here is taken by the first violin. Let's have a listen to this. And the woodwind section is basically doubling the melody. We have bassoon doubling, the melody an octave lower, and oboes harmonizing the melody on top. As we mentioned, we have a lot of movements in the strings, with those big, wide arpeggios. So for the accompaniment, it really helps to have some pads or something, underneath it to make the harmony a little bit clearer. And for that, we have French horns swelling in and out of each other with clarinets. And very subtle, we have a triangle hit here every 2 bars. So let's have a listen to everything together. It wouldn't feel right to do an episode of the series without a string arrangement, so be ready for that. Harmonically here is slightly more modern than everything I did for this episode, I think, and is way, way more, in my comfort zone. I was basically trying to do a version of Barber's Adagio for strings, and obviously because of the era and, the type of music, this kind of, feels a little bit more contemporary, maybe. I think I'm just going to play violin 2 and violas first, because they're basically doing the very same thing, and functionally, and then cellos and basses, and then we'll put them together. Nothing special, just open chords and octaves here on that low F. This cadence here at the end is particularly beautiful. It's something I've stolen, from Barber and reused in my own music so many times. Let's listen to this. And it's basically some kind of B flat major 7 over D resolving to like an E flat major 7. So let's have a listen to the full example again. The most important part here is basically just the big flourishes that we have on woodwinds, right? And what they're doing is basically just doing some arpeggios with bigger kind of intervals. For the most part is going to be fourths, perfect fourths and fifths. And again, unfortunately, these are some of the things that samples don't do very well, but, it's fine. So on the percussion section, we have something similar happening. We have basically the same part on celeste, and we have some glissandos on harp. And what these two parts do in context with the woodwinds is basically, kind of blending them a little bit better. But what about the rest? So the melody is on strings again, so violin 1 and violin 2 in 2 octaves. And the rest of the accompaniment is basically just playing some open chords. Everybody in the string section is playing divisi, including the basses. And on top of everything, we have French horns. That's it, let's play it one more time. So I think you probably know what this is as well.
I like very much this garden.
There's something really strange and addictive happening, harmonically over here. I don't quite know why that is, but I'm sure Stravinsky decided to put it there because of the way it feels, when you play it. And what I decided to do, I kind of changed the bottom part of the chord, leaving the upper part basically the same. And what's happening in the orchestration is, we have that on strings being repeated over and over. And we have some accents or stabs here at the end before we move on to the different section. And that's on French horns and piccolo and flutes. Really strange here, we have the melody in 2 octaves and played by bassoons and contrabassoons. And it sounds really quite strange and alien because the melody is diatonic, and the accompaniment is not. And what happens here at the end is a combination of different things. We have like a fraction of the melody being played by English horn and doubled in 2 octaves by violins pizzicato. So it's basically like a different ostinato. And in the bottom end, we have a couple of different things happening. We have cellos and bassoons. They're playing different things, but they're still highlighting, the same notes in the chord that we had before. And on the top, we have some major second trios on clarinets that are clashing against the ostinato. So we have a lot of semitones here. Really strange. But we're not done just yet. We have a couple of, descending runs playing down the chromatic scale. And that's on alto flute and clarinet. So let's listen to everything together. Apparently, it took us 88 examples to talk about octaves. I've taken the orchestration from, the beginning of the Ninth Symphony by Beethoven. It's pretty much the same orchestration, is strings in 4 octaves. So let's have a listen to those. And this is something you would expect, Violin 1 and Violin 2 are playing in unison with violas an octave lower. And then right below them, we have basses and cellos playing 2 octaves apart. Here at the end, we have some, some chords on violins and violas being arpeggiated very fast because obviously they can't play chords. And yeah, we still have some stabs in the basses. For the woodwind section, we have something similar. We have bassoons basically doubling the cellos, as always. We have 2 flutes playing 2 octaves apart, oboes and clarinets doubling the lower octave. And for the brass section, we basically only have French horns and trumpets. Something I found often in this style of music, is the way these chords tend to be orchestrated, which you tend to find a lot of, roots and thirds, but not many fifths. And this is not something I would normally do myself, but, it seems to come with the style. But as you know, I'm not an expert. And for the timpani, we only basically have 2 kettles. So we're playing roots and fifths. Let's have a listen to everything. Very strange chord progression here, and particularly that second chord is a Lydian kind of chord, but I'm not really sure if Debussy would think about these sorts of things this way. That said, it's a common sound for Impressionism, and yeah, particularly that going together with the whole tone scale, which we do have on harp. The rest of the accompaniment is made of a couple of different things. We have some kind of pulse here on French horns and flutes. And that's just a major third. While for the rest of the section, we have some moving lines highlighting the rest of the chord tones. And we have a very thick kind of melodic texture, again, with Violin 1 and Violin 2 playing 2 octaves apart in the upper register, and violas and cellos divisi playing an octave lower. We have quite a lot of different things happening at the same time here. And this basically consists, in stacking of different ostinatos. And the harmony kind of implies an A minor 11 chord and some kind of F sharp 11. Let's have a listen to a couple of different parts in isolation. We have, the main part on violas and clarinets. And that's soon after joined by bassoons. The bassoons join together with flutes, but what we have here is surprising. So this is actually a musical illusion. This is what happens on flute 1. And this is what happens on flute 2. But when you put them together, they kind of make a different part. Very cool, very interesting. It's something I didn't know and I find fascinating. So what else do we have? On the strings, we have some other harmonies as soon as the basses and cellos join in. And for the melody, we have some, like a really, simplified version of it. And that's made of a couple of different things. We have harmonics on, violin 1, and oboes playing 2 octaves apart, some kind of sforzando. But from my understanding, it was something, John Adams was trying to do here, was modifying the timbre of the instruments by changing, the attack of the notes. So what I did here, I played with percussion a little bit, I first used harp and piano, playing this part. That is kind of emulating a delay effect, and, that's even more clear as soon as the glockenspiel join in. And if you put it together with violin 1 and oboes, you hopefully have something, different. And on top of everything, we have this choir. And honestly, I've taken this from Steve Reich more than John Adams, but I felt like it fitted the music quite well. And what this is basically a couple of chords swelling in and out of each other. Cool, that's everything. Let's have a listen. That's it, guys. This episode was particularly challenging. I don't know much about this style of music, but I certainly learned a lot from just by doing this. If you like what I do and want to support the channel, please have a look at my Patreon. I share all the files for the series alongside many other things. Stay tuned for the very last episode. It's going to be epic, and see you very soon. Bye.